Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can see me. Clap 3 times if you love Adams State University. Okay, awesome. Welcome, bienvenidos. I'm Dr. Florencio Urias Aranda III, and it is an honor and a privilege to serve as your Executive Equity Officer. What is that? What's that fancy title? I am the person who co-creates, co-leads, and partners with each and every one of you to expand our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts here at Adams State University. I am more than thrilled, excited to welcome you to our Martin Luther King, or Dr. Martin Luther King Remembrance Luncheon in honor of such a pioneer, an innovator, a man who changed so many lives and we continue to feel his impact today. It is an honor and a privilege also to welcome our keynote speaker. Very quickly, this man and I have known each other since 2003, when we were in high school. We were both at Upward Bound Math and Science Trio Works, so kudos to Trio programs. Yes. So we were at math. He is originally from Louisiana. I'm originally from Texas, and we were at an Upward Bound Math and Science summer program. And from the very beginning, Dr. Miles and I, at that point, he was just Matt to me, and I was just Noonie to him, a nickname. We would sit for hours and hours into the night talking about how we wanted to change the world. Fast forward, we're both in higher education. We're both diversity, equity, and inclusion advocates, and we're both student-facing. We do this work because we love you all, our students. So without further ado, please help me welcome our MLK keynote speaker, Dr. Matthew Miles.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you for the warm welcome. I'm excited to be here and just to share parts of my story, parts of information on how we can move forward, and some tips that we can leave as some actionable steps. All right? So just to give us a roadmap, we have our introduction, so I will introduce myself more embedded throughout the presentation. Challenges about moving forward, how to move forward, Dr. King's impact, reality of the day, and in closing. So this is sort of our roadmap of what we'll follow on today. So introduction about myself. So you see here some pictures from my childhood. The picture there is my mother, little dog that I had. I actually still have it today. Actually, it's just pent up at home, hidden in a box, but it is there, and a childhood picture of myself. But you see the picture beside it is comedian Bernie Mac, and from there, if you're familiar with this actor, he had a slight stuttering problem, or he was acting as if someone was stuttering in his family. So that is what I had. I had a speech impediment. You may not be able to recognize it now. I've kind of grown out of it. Shout out to speech pathologists or whatnot. I had a speech instructor that really worked with me through the years. And I grew out of it around 4th, 5th grade. So before getting to that grade, of course, I was bullied. I hated myself, all the things that come with having a speech impediment, stuttering problem, and was a little bit of a geek inside with that. So to try to build my own self-confidence in some of those areas, I jumped into martial arts. Some like MMA now and whatnot before it really became a thing. So I got into martial arts, 1st degree black belt in Taekwondo. But I also was immersed in church. As you see, that's my baptism picture. That is also the principal. My K through 6th grade principal was an African-American man. And then the picture here, we was in honors. You may not be able to see me here at the bottom, but I also had the jean jacket at the time, how it comes kind of fluctuate through styles or whatnot. So it's interesting how some of us today mention that they don't see black men in education or in the classroom. And just unbeknownst to me, that I was around black male leaders all the time in different assets or whatnot. So that wasn't my reality. Again, I just mentioned my principal was an African-American man. So I started to take some pride in some of my experiences as time went on. So I became involved. Again, I mentioned about bullying and not being able to navigate certain spaces. So as I got more involved, I kind of gained some self-confidence. I joined SGA. I became a part of National Beta Club, a part of this Chosen Generation. It was an interfaith group that we had in our community. Became a community advocate still at a young age. This is still in high school. Perfect attendance. So from kindergarten to 12th grade, I never missed a day out of school. Fun fact. So even my parents still sent me to school, when I got the shots, when I took the medicine, all the things and whatnot. So again, another bullying fact with that, because who never missed a day out of school? But essentially, that was one of the things. And so eventually even climbed up to the ranks my senior year, becoming our class president, which I'm still our senior class president of today. But I became so involved and immersed in that, I had a car accident. Fell asleep at the wheel or whatnot during that time. So it really caused me to reflect on who I was and what I was doing. Why was I so involved? Was I just trying to appease people again, I had the trauma of a child of being bullying. Was I just trying to show up in all the spaces? So I really had to reflect. And so this accident happened towards my senior year in high school. So I really had to reflect on what I wanted to do when I went to college. So I went to college at Northwestern State University, ended up joining the speech and debate team, became an RA, worked in Res Life. Those of you that work in Res Life, became Business Professionals of America, and also was called to the ministry as well in that summer, going into college as well. So I'm also a minister also. So the hats just kept climbing in with that. But as I started to gain more educational acumen, started to look at more things differently, this picture is a picture of my family, whatnot. So, and it's different facets of my family. These are my great-grandparents on my dad's side, and these are my grandparents on my mom's side, my immediate family here, my grandparents again. And so, but you see here at the top, there's so many last names on this family banner. And I also, as you can, Miles is spelled with a Y. My name is spelled with an I. So I started to just be more inquisitive, to ask more questions of why this was. And so essentially, when I started to track back my family lineage on certain things, here is my grandparents' home. I remember going to visit my grandparents and going to be in this place. So this is actually a cotton field that is in the background here. So we just called that the country when we was just going to visit our grandparents. Didn't really know nothing about the land we was playing on. This is my great-grandfather's house. We actually still have the house, and we're just making renovations over time. Some people may want to go home with their families to disconnect, and so we still actually have the house. But it really started to ask me questions of what this land was. And so then around when I was younger, my grandfather passed, and so this man that owned the land said that you had to move off of the property if you can't till the land. And so, but I wasn't purview to this information until I was in college. And I always wondered why that my grandmother had to move from this place here to now this kind of burnt down place that was here. So again, this house is still burnt down, but we put 2 trailers on this land here. So it really just started me to ask more questions of reflection. So come to find out that my parents and grandparents were sharecroppers. Basically, the white owner came to my grandparents and said, since now that your grandfather has passed, if you cannot work in the field with us, then essentially you have to move off of the property. And so essentially, then this is the history of, it's called Bel Air Plantation. So what I thought was the country was essentially a plantation that was owned called Bel Air Plantation. This is still up to date. These are recent pictures. And so when I think about challenges moving forward and threading in what I've done with my life, I think about the challenges that we have today. So racial battle fatigue is one. We have leader identity is another. We have cultural and environmental factors. We think about imposter syndrome. We think about social isolation, and then challenging worldviews. These are some issues that we see in our challenges that we have today as we're trying to move forward, and I think about how I want to move forward in my own personal life. So you think about racial battle fatigue. It is various forms of mental, emotional, and physical strain that can encompass with microaggressions or racism. You think about imposter syndrome. You think about that it's a psychological experience, thinking that you're not good enough, but you have all the skills that is within you. You think about social isolation. You think about there are contacts having with few people and interaction. Essentially, even after COVID, we're still experiencing some sense of social isolation. You think about leader identity. You're having to navigate all of these different nuances and all of these different expectations of you that's still balancing who you are as a leader. You even think about cultural and environmental factors. You think about everyone has social norms, everyone has biases, everyone has geographical dynamics, everyone has different family dynamics, and this can shape your essential leader identity and the factors that you come to the table with. And then it's also challenging our worldviews today, often deeply intertwined with what we believe, how we navigate the world today, and how we essentially challenge those worldviews today. So essentially, when you think about wearing a hat in a building, it may have been a learned ideology that we learned, grew up, but if it's code, myself being a bald head, and someone may challenge, hey, why do you wear a hat inside the building, right? Something as simple as that is continuing to shape, then that's on a small scale, but think about on a larger scale, you're challenging your family or those moral values that you have on a larger scale. And so when you think about how we plan to move forward as a new leader, as we talk about Dr. King's impact, these are some 3 areas that we want to look at: ability to develop, motivation to develop, and support for development. So the first one we'll look at is ability to develop. So you think about someone's cognitive complexity. When you think about cognitive complexity, I want you to think about your global intelligence. How you view the world today is your worldview, what you learned, what you gained. As I shared in my introduction, that is my worldview. That is my global intelligence. Those are the things that how I view the world. And that doesn't make my view wrong or right. It's just that's now my global intelligence of what I have. And I have to continually to unpack that. So that's cognitive complexity. So you think about self-concept, it is that's next. That's how do I unpack those learned experiences? How do I learn those new challenges and grow? So that's what we're here in higher education. So you think about the attack on higher education or the attack in trying to change up the classroom in K through 12 or whatnot. Those self-concepts, things that you're learning, you're trying to unpack those experiences and how you can then reflect on those experiences. And mindfulness. Mindfulness is a new term that we've kind of been learning for a while or whatnot. And so we see some research that comes out of mindfulness. And one of the attributes that comes out of mindfulness is being able to pay attention. So there's been some strong relationships that if college students particularly can be able to pay attention and more acutely, then they're able to grow who they are in their leadership identity, in their ability to develop. And so you think about all the things that's competing our interests, right? We have social media, we have family, we have friends, we want to go out. We have all of these different things that's competing our interests that's now missing our ability to pay attention. And so this is one of the things, as we talked about abilities to develop, this is an example of putting theory to practice. And so here, this is a Black male leadership class that I taught. I've taught it for about 9 years. And so here, this is, it was a first year experience course. You can see me on here on the corner. This is actually us finishing up some community service at this event. So we come out of here with 5 learning outcomes that I scored or plan to teach out of the class. Again, I've taught it for 9 years. So critical thinking and problem solving, oral and written communication, college and career readiness, community engagement and service, and global competency. So these are defined as community engagement service project. So here, this was a community project. We was painting some gates and we was replanting some plants for Arbor Day around the same time. Here, defining what manhood is, right? Unpacking that self-concept. We hear opinions about racial profiling or generational differences. We're now in the beta generation. We've been trying to figure out Gen Z. We're now 2 generations ahead now or whatnot. So even to unpack that, oral and written communication. My class did not have any tests in my class. It was all experiential learning. So we did active learning strategies. So we did 60-second quizzes. Tell me what you learned last week. We did some reflections. We did more experiential learning things in the classroom so they could engage and be more hands-on. Again, college readiness. So we've had speakers come in to the class to be able to just talk about different topics that came from the class themselves. So we've had students today talk about internship or entrepreneurship, financial literacy, talk about owning a business. So we've had people from Chase Bank, different banks, think about this is a freshman class. So they may have never bought a car before. So I was able to connect with some car dealerships in the community, have them come talk to the class about should you rent a car, should you buy a car. So these are things that are changing their self-concept on how they view the world and giving them a space to change their ability to develop. So as we now think about their motivation to develop, here are some things that research has shown that intrinsic motivation was a high motivating factor so what internally motivates our students? We have to think about that. You know, learning goal orientation, there's been the often debate about are you a born leader or do you develop as a leader? So it doesn't show that anyone is a born leader. It just shows that your global intelligence, those things that you grew up doing, in fact, makes your leadership. So think about if you're growing up in a single parent home, you may have had to help with the bills at an early age. So now as you're growing up, you're learning already mathematician skills and with that real life application. You may have been, again, in a single parent home and you may have had to work and help out around the house. So no one is actually a born leader. It's just they've been exposed to a lot of different things through their lifespan that now gives them this ability to have this learning goal orientation. So then you have this safe space of leader developmental psychological capital. That means, are you a self-efficacious leader? Are you a resilient leader? Are you a hopeful leader? Or are you an optimistic leader? And so these shows that this research was done in communities of color, particularly African-American men, and it showed that these areas were also high with those students of color. And so here, when you think about leadership experiences, again, their motivation to develop, you think about students' leadership development experience, they're more likely to engage in leader development. There are more developmental experiences that come out of that experiential learning piece. That's why I incorporated that in my class. But also, they're more resilient to poor experiences or poor performance if they're more resilient and more prone to that. So again, that goes into what we do in student affairs with our student organizations. You know, often people think that we're the fun environment of the student affairs lane, as my dean of students had. But we learn different critical thinking skills out of the classroom. So if they learn how to tap into their active engagement, they're learning civic engagement and enable students to access resources because they learn how to navigate the campus. They then be able to construct responses. So because they're able to have good intellectual dialogue with their peers, they're able to now navigate those conversations when they're in real world opportunities. They also resolve masculinity identity conflicts, particularly for men. We get learned or embraced with all of these different things of what imposes what a man should do, what a man should not do. You know, and these are some of these things are learned experiences that are passed down through the generation. Some of these things are lived experiences of things we interact with, and it sometimes can be conflicting with someone's masculine identity. And so, but if someone gets involved, they then learn to shape their identity and who they are as a person. But they're also able to overcome different educational deficiencies. We know as students of color, that the first time they may see a counselor is when they get to college, because they now have access to free resources. They may not have had access to resources growing up in their environment, but because we offer that in the college campus, that you can go to the counseling center, you can go to the health center, and they can just walk over now. So they may have undiagnosed issues that they're just now starting to unpack, because they now know that, oh, I'm just now learning that I'm ADHD. I'm just now learning I have a learning deficiency. And so these are things that they now can learn if we're able to tap them into our situations. And then that impacts others, because they may want to bring others along the way and say, hey, it wasn't a bad experience. And so this is how you motivate leadership. So these are some real, again, experiences. So we did this leadership panel where we were able to bring some of the student leaders on campus, and we had a panel of black men, and we were just able to talk about how they navigate campus. The bottom picture here, I'm also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, as you may have saw earlier. And so these are two students that are in top leadership roles in our fraternity as college students. They're on the national board of directors. And so you think about the experiences that they're getting. At the top here, all of these students, I've had a chance to impact and teach in some capacity. So, but he was there, Mr. UL. She was the SGA president and also our RHA president, and he also won homecoming. And this is the first time they started adding men to the homecoming court. So it's just interesting to see that students you may have had an impact with in a freshman level now being able to climb up to be great leaders in their own way. Here at the top, these students wanted to talk about the narratives about hair texture and hair color on campuses. And so this was around a wave when you talk about, what different hairstyles in the workplace. So they did a do-rag and bonnet day, and they walked around the whole day wearing do-rag and bonnets to, again, create conversations. Hey, why are you wearing that with us? So I said, hey, I still work here. I can't wear it all day, but I'll come to the event when they do the gathering together, and I'll wear a do-rag. So that's why I wore the do-rag with them to show that I support the initiative. And sometimes the students need that when that type of support that show that what they're doing is worth the wait or whatnot. And so here, there's another student of mine here. Again, started as a freshman in my class, became Greek, went for his master's degree, and now he's in the New Orleans area leading other projects in the community with the mayor. So again, you never know someone's trajectory and the things that you expose them to and how that would then impact them. But that's just motivation to develop. Next, lastly, we have support for development. So here, the church environment could be your religious environment, could be a place of support. And this is a student here. We presented at a conference called SBSLC, Southwestern Black Student Leadership Conference, and he entered the proposal himself as a student. They'll let students be able to make presentations, and he was able to win the presentation, and I co-presented with him at this conference. So again, a leader taking the initiative to be able to do the work in that way. So under support for development, you have to have the learning culture and you have to have the development. So the learning culture could be the safe space of psychological safety. And these words that we hear even in the workplace today, is your workplace a psychological safe environment to be who you are and to be in a safe space? So even our students look for that safe space that they're looking for. And those developmental networks. Developmental networks is simply as mentors. It could be mentors or sponsors. And that's what we have to do if you want to develop new leaders today. We have to be able to give them a space that's psychologically safe, but also be able to give them a space that can also have a mentor of support. Again, some pictures to support this. I worked in the community college space, and we were able to take students to Washington, D.C., and one of the pictures was on the wall here, the Mall on Washington. So again, students that had never been outside of the city, never been outside the state, was now able to be here and take a picture and have this experience. Again, that learning culture, putting learning in the classroom outside of the experience. Here, we took a large delegation here to that same conference that I just mentioned. Here, Also community service. Students that's never been exposed to community service, never cleaned anything before, never did community outreach, now exposed to doing this type of work. And also leadership retreats. We was able to take our Greek life, our RHA, our RAs, our UPC, our SGA to a camp that was nearby. And then, so they were able to build community with each other because they were the leaders on campus, and also be able to learn all of these leadership things. And we did this around every January. Again, creating the learning culture and the environment so they're able to have and be free to talk about the things that they want to talk about, but also plan for the semester. So again, some actionable steps: mentorship, social integration, and support groups. All of these things can help you move the needle forward to create new leadership tools in that. So that's kind of when we think about Dr. King's impact that's having today, it's interwoven in what the things that I just mentioned. You think about the education, right? All of these images that you've seen has been inside the educational classroom. Dr. King was an advocate for education. We must remember that intelligence is not enough. Intelligence plus character, that's the true goal of education. So they're learning civic engagement, learning character skills, learning masculinity, learning global intelligence. All of these things are shaping who they are. You think about equality. They're learning about nonviolence. They're learning about unity. They're learning about all the things that you're doing in those spaces. Think about justice. Dr. King believed in justice was a birthright of a human being. Again, leader identity shows up. We know the intersections of Dr. King being a pastor, being a doctor, still going through education, and even when we read more of his story, that he wasn't even the original face of the movement. He graduated from college, he moved to Tennessee, and then they were already talking about the movement, and because he was the new kid on the block, they invited him to the meeting and said, hey, can you help us with this movement or whatnot? So he decided that he was going to be the one to kind of help lead the movement forward or whatnot. But it was his collective skills that was able to help them give him that launch. Service. Sometimes we do this day of service and all the things that we're advocating for with our students. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. Courage, having the courage to do those things. And sometimes students don't know what they don't know, so we have to create those experiences for them to be able to then tap into those experiences. So some of those students doing the community service piece, they're able to then do other things that they're able to want to do, because now they may want to work in sustainability. They may want to do community advocacy work. So I use this picture here. Again, this student here, one of my fraternity brothers, joined the chapter. He's SGA president. He's Mr. Northwestern at my alma mater. He's also one of the top collegiate positions of Alpha. So he's the assistant regional vice president. Just keep plummeting forward and all the things that he's doing because he feels supportive and have that learning culture to be able to do that. This picture here is unique to me, especially this person in the green. His name is Tyreek Washington. So he was always a part of RHA, but he always just was a committee person. He loved programming. He loved doing the work in the community or whatnot. So then many of his peers graduated and he was left. So I said, hey, I need you to be president. He was like, I'm really not a leader type guy. I really don't want to see myself as president. I said, you've been here all this time. You have all the skills that you need. So he said, if you're still here with me as my advisor, I'll be the president. And I said, you have a deal or whatnot. So again, he was president that whole entire time, being over RAs and being over the RHA. So the next year he transfers to Xavier because he's in the medical field and he has to continue his education as Xavier to continue to be a doctor. So now he sends me this, that you gave me the courage to be president of my class here in the doctor. So I wasn't even there, Xavier, right? But he transferred and he felt like the experience that he had as a president at RHA gave him the skill set and the confidence to be president of now of his class, of his peers, as he's in the doctor program. So truly, with the impact that you make, the courage that he had to do those things. Next, leadership, education. Dr. King, again, the impact that you make. This student here, he ended up having a lot of changing of degrees, changing of majors, right? He ended up coasting with a degree in interdisciplinary studies. Some call it general studies, but now he's going for his master's degree in higher education. So again, you don't know the impact that you're going to make. Again, Dalen Coleman, another person that's changed his major multiple times, but realized he wanted to do something with leadership. So now he's working in higher education, went for his master's at Morgan State University. Now he's working at Florida State University, continuing to push himself forward. This student here, another student I taught, recently just got his MBA in school, and he sent me a text saying, thank you for being a part of my life, to give me the courage to say, I can do this, right? So just by you showing up in support of each other with social groups, with peers, being able to see, you never know the life that students will have. So that takes me to courage. Again, a theme of Dr. King's impact. This student here, you can't see his face, but the student here, he's able to meet former President Barack Obama, right, and sit at the table with him, but he felt like his skills that he had at UL Lafayette with us and with the environment that we created was able to then put him in the rooms with some of these individuals. This student here at the top, this male right here, this is him singing at the Christmas Macy's a parade that they have, and he's singing with Brandy here on Macy's Christmas parade. You don't know the impact, right? The courage to be able to do Broadway, to do those type of things. Here at the bottom, the same student, he's presenting now at the Association of Fraternity Advisors, right? So you go now from changing majors, finding a master's, finding your fit. Now you're presenting at conferences, just continuing to grow his own leader identity. And here, this student here, her name is Ashlyn, and so she was a community college student. She tutored others and peers in math, and still now being able to do her own thing and present for the Young Alumni Association in the community of Lafayette. So again, the courage, the leader identity, all of the things to Dr. King's dream. This student here, community activism. We're giving back to the community when different floods or natural disasters that happen. And then they're also doing their own walks, MLK event. They basically did a reenactment of the March on Washington. Again, that civic engagement that we're talking about with Dr. King's impact. So one of the things that came out is emotional intelligence. When talk about leader identity, emotional intelligence can be taught, that we see today. So you think about our brains have evolved, not in physical structure, but the things that we're exposed to. And so essentially that impacts how we navigate emotions day to day. You think anybody can be triggered by anything, right? It could be things that we've seen on TV, our lived experiences. And I'll just say one experience that when I go jogging now, when I'm running in the community, if I see women running in front of me, I'll scale back, because I don't want anyone to assume that I'm chasing them. I don't want anyone to assume that I'm trying to prevent harm. So I'll go a different route, because everyone has different lived experiences. Everyone has seen different things. So now I have to sort of be proactive in what I think and how I navigate the system, or navigate just running casually. During, COVID, all the gyms were closed. Everyone was trying to work out in different ways. So I have to navigate that, because anybody can be triggered by anything. Everyone has a bias. Communication barriers. There's even some data that says that companies spend $62.4 million a year on training because of inadequate communication. So all the things that professional development, all of the things that cost and count up money, and these are plenty of companies that are navigating this. So strong relationships matter when you're trying to navigate emotional intelligence, because you're trying to navigate different nuances, different communication styles, what things that I may have learned or communicate with. Some people are like rather direct. Some people aren't as direct. And how does that impact different people and how they communicate? And so we have to be able to navigate those things today. So some quotes here: emotional intelligence teams have been proven to lower anxiety and depression, higher self-esteem and greater empathy, more trusting and cooperative relationships. Strong, healthy relationships can help strengthen your immune system, help you recover from disease, and even lengthen your health of life. So prostate cancer. is high, particularly in men, and definitely high in African American men. So if I don't have psychological safe environments, if I don't have an environment that can navigate emotional intelligence, it can impact the cortisol level, which is the stress enzyme in my body that would then inflate my potentiality to having prostate cancer. So workplaces, school places have to have this type of thing. So when we talk about Dr. King's impact, it has residual impacts on a lot of different environments and a lot of different things on how we impact the world today. So we think about the reality of the day. Think about more companies are requiring job seekers to not have a college degree. You think about there's an attack on higher education. Men are declining going to college. You think about that students, 36% of college students don't have enough to eat. And all of these things are impacting students and even adult learners. Even some of us may be in today may have food insecurities that we may not talk about, right? So these things that are challenging us today. The students, AI is impacting students today, right? And how they learn and perceive information. DEI bans, the meaningless of having help. This is what young people are saying. Affirmative action. All of these things are impacting students and how they navigate the world today. And again, if we don't equip them with all of these different experiences, when they leave us in our 4-year institutions, 5-year institutions, or however the lifespan of the student is attending the college, they have to be able to leave our space and be able to navigate those systems as well. So more reality, mental health. Loneliness is 34%, feeling unimportant 44%, general sense of things falling apart 45%. This is what the students are saying that they're impacting. 2023, 55% of college companies have eliminated the bachelor's degree. So we're trying to encourage students to now go get a bachelor's degree, but yet now this is a challenge that a lot of companies are facing. Backlash towards topics to avoid exploration. When colleges, the history of higher education, it was about the exploration of ideas. We had religion, astronomy, we had all of these different things that higher ed was exposing individuals to. But now there's such a backlash on even exploring topics and just trying to think more about it. And then this sense of belonging on campus is another area that's under attack in our areas today. So in closing, when you think about the impact of Dr. King and you think about all the things we can do to create new leaders of today, I think about, again, the lived experiences. I wouldn't be who I am today without my lived experiences. And that creates my identity development. That creates who I am, my ability to have speech and debate team experiences because I could debate in rooms. You think about how to navigate my lived experience of having health care, right? I think about my parents not being able to have access to health care because the midwife spelled it wrong on my parents' birth certificate. So now we have a lineage of generations that have a different last name just by the misspelling of one. So I advocate for health care, right? When in rural areas that may not have health care. So all of your lived experiences create actionable steps for you. This picture is important to me also because this is when I first taught the class, in 2016, this is the group I taught, right? And so you can see this student here with the tongue out. His name is Adrian or whatnot. So we was at this community service cleaning up. Years later, possibly last year, I'm working at the community college and we run into each other again. And he said, I have 2 daughters, Mr. Matt, and I need to be able to be a good influence for my 2 daughters, so I'm going back to school. He finished his engineering degree at the community college. He's now transferring back to the same university where he was to continue his 4-year degree in engineering. So still there's motivation out there, and just by you making a difference in the life of the students and the impact that you have, you never know who you're, and this was years apart. This was 2016, and this was last year, 2024. Years apart, but the deposits, the seeds that you drop are lifelong gems that you'll always drop in a person. So I thank you for your time on today. I'll leave you with this quote from Dr. King. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to be vigilant, and to face the challenge of change head on. And this is from Dr. King himself. So again, I thank you for allowing me to be here on today, and I hope everyone had a great time.
Okay, so with about 10 minutes left in the hour. We are going to open it up for any questions the audience might have for Dr. Matthew Miles. And as we are having our Q&A, please enjoy the meal. Go back, have some more. If you're wondering what you're eating, the meals that was served today were Dr. MLK's favorite meals. So fried chicken, peach cobbler, mashed potatoes, collard greens, cornbread, the list goes on and on. So any questions for Dr. Miles? Come on, Grizzlies. Awesome. Yes, sir.
Very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Buck. I'm the new Assistant Vice President of Enrollment
Thank you.
here at Adams
Nice to meet
State. Moved out here from Chicago, so a lot of what you presented today really touches home. The question is, knowing in the immediate future a lot of the threats that we're going to see with the challenges in diversity, equity, and inclusion, what can we do as educational and academic leaders to protect those interests?
Awesome. I think today, diversity, equity, inclusion is just the buzzword of today. As I mentioned with some of the students we had last night when we had dinner, that DEI efforts have always been pivotal in higher education. You think about the First Generation Act in 1963. You think about when Disabilities Act was written. You think about the birth of HBCUs, when women was allowed to then enter our spaces because colleges was created for men. So diversity has always been at the fight of society. So I think you may not have to package it as DEI, but continue to do the work is important because you have our veterans, you have our adult learners, all of these different individuals. Our international students are always going to come. So just finding a different way to repackage it, but the work has always been there since the beginning of college education. You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Miles?
It's a question behind you, Dr. Flo.
Oh, hello, yes. My bestie, Sandy.
That was amazing. So thank you very much for your in-depth walk through your life. You mentioned something about your ministry, and then I know Dr. King was very involved in ministry and his spirituality.
Yes.
Would you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. It wasn't as my walk in ministry. I see myself doing some similar work. I see the liberation work of ministry similarly to Dr. King. So when I'm in communities to advocate, to show up for spiritual spaces like breast cancer, or I've been invited to give prayer to those opportunities. So it's important for students to identify with their spiritual identity because it was important in the walk with Dr. King. So I too believe in the liberation work and walking through having the mind of Christ. So when I see an individual, I see, am I looking at a reflection of God in my view? And so therefore being able to still do that work in that way.
Good question. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Miles? Yes. I'm getting my steps in for the day.
Good questions.
So since a lot of us work directly with students, what advice could you give us to help students keep being motivated, especially because sometimes, especially like now that it's like winter, there's that like seasonal depression of like, I don't really want to leave my dorm. I don't want to hang out with friends. I kind of just want to stay in my own little comfort spot. Like what advice could you give us to kind of help students become more involved and step more into that, getting more motivated, especially being homesick and dealing with that seasonal depression?
Right. I think the sense of belonging piece is going to be important when the students have that social integration among each other, whether it be whatever their interests are. It could be the sci-fi club. It could be, just watching anime. I'm an anime person or whatnot. So having students to kind of identify with, even as peers or as students, leaders, or as faculty and staff, if you're able to ask some intrusive questions, because we're not counselors, we're not trained in that capacity, but if you're they're able to, so one of the things I did in the class for my introverts and extroverts was I had these reflection questions at the beginning due every Monday. And some of the questions was, did you eat today? Did you have enough sleep? Did you work out? Did you connect with friends? And so being able to then ask those questions, hey, you kind of mentioned you missed a few meals. You kind of mentioned you didn't go to the gym this week. Is there something at home that's having? So then they're realizing that, someone's thinking about me. Someone is, and it may be someone like, hey, if their friend circle, say, hey, so-and-so mentioned that they wasn't sleeping well, just keep an eye on them or whatnot. So it kind of still creates that community unofficially, so they know they have friends that look out for them.
Any other questions for Dr. Miles?
Good questions, good questions.
Okay. No questions? Are you sure? Going once, going twice. All right. So Dr. Miles, or ASU Grizzlies, please help me give Dr. Miles one more round of applause.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
I'm calling up Dr. Heidi Schneider to help me. Dr. Schneider used to do the role that I'm in a part-time basis while navigating and handling 32 other million things. She remains kind of that soundboard for me as I take on this role, this collective and collaborative role with you all. So I called her up here because we both have a token of appreciation for your insight, your words, and all of that. We want you to go back to the University of Mississippi, or Mississippi University for Women, with a little Adams State green. So there's a lot of yes, there's a lot of green in there. So again, thank you so much. On that note, I want to say thank you all for all the beautiful work that you're doing to help advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. This work is everybody's work, and if we don't do it together, it will not happen. And so let's continue to embrace the impact, the legacy, and the work that Dr. King did by continuing to do the work together. I wanted to plug in one final MLK event that we have. It will happen this Saturday at 10 a.m. at La Puente Home, Inc. We're doing a day of service, so if you are able to give back to our beloved Alamosa and SLV community, please feel free to do that. On that note, may you all have a wonderful day, and go Grizzlies. Thank you.